$1,000 was
Incoming transmission.
Welcome back, everybody. My name's Murray. I'm your host, and this is Big Book Radio. Welcome back, if you came back. If you came back, good call. The entire setup of this show is designed to confound the ego, the self, to give your awakening self an opportunity to see ego or the self trying to block out information, especially new information. The last hour of the first episode was a large pill to swallow all at once, and in doing this, I accomplished at least two goals. The first, I loved Don F. as a teacher. He was the teacher that saved my life. He was the guide. Could have been anybody, could have been you. It was Don. The second goal was to drive away the unripe egos or selves. There's no sense throwing gems before swine. None are so blind as those who will not see. See, my third goal is this. I might miss a future opportunity to help when somebody does crash, hit bottom, and anything that's wrong with them, whatever the substance is, when they finally realize there's nothing they themselves can do to help themselves and no one else. We'll be here. I'll be here, and I hope to have help for those people when they look for it. Give you a direction. Give you a guide. So if you're here for episode 2, you've already done a lot. Good on you. Welcome back. That's the theme, but so yeah, so there you go. Comments, whatever. I want to take that. That's Big Bill Wilson, right?
Yep.
That's from the day Dr. Bob died. So I've got a full cut from that further in. That's like the rest of that. It'll be in the middle a little bit, but so there's a good place to start. You want to hear, we don't have any recordings of Jesus or Muhammad, but we got one of Bill Wilson, so we can start there, right?
Did you just compare Bill Wilson to Jesus?
No. I would never, knowing what I know about Bill Wilson, that just can't happen.
No, exactly. That's what I was like,
But
what?
he sure started some trouble. I mean,
Absolutely.
he definitely wasn't
Absolutely.
alone, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree.
I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce the people that came to my house when I first assembled some friends to help me design and conceive of Big Book Radio. The lady with the big laugh is Kate. We met her in episode 1. The other lady is named Martha. Martha was here when I got here, and I've certainly learned a lot from her over the years, and I admire and respect her opinion. Jay has been around only 6 months. He's the first one that ever came out of the treatment center down in the city asking for a booker, and when he found me, said, would I help him? And I did, and he hasn't looked back yet. Young Chris is over there too. He's the guy that, the other male guy, you don't hear him too much except when we talk about Chris Raymer, and he speaks up, and that's why I have him around. He showed me this person named Chris R, and that we'll put him in here with the cut. And he puts in words what so many people think, and I thank our Chris for introducing us to the Texas Chris. And of course, I'm your host, Murray, and you're going to get tired of my voice. I know I never do. And so those are the players that were in the room when we hear the following scenes. Thank you.
Please do I?
That's a bit of a miscut, but you see where we're going. Eh? This is a famous thing. The challenge I'm having with the audience that I don't know who's listening, and I'm afraid of three things, and I'm looking forward to three. One of the things I'm really afraid of is people heard this far in and went, oh, it's an AA thing. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm a Reiki person, or there's all kinds of spiritual practices, and they turn it off. Also, I don't want an alcoholic tuning in and saying this is, well, if they do, this is heresy. AA is not like this, and go off and then just turn it off. They probably already turned it off. And I also want to talk to the people who are studying or looking from their angle hard enough to see the commonalities here, what we enjoy with what they study. And that's what I'm really looking forward to, bringing this message to anybody who needs it and wants it. So we're probably going to end up talking a bit of technical AA stuff where your people from out there don't know what we're talking about. And I want to take this to a different level that some of us may or may not see in AA. It could, like a higher spiritual level, a deeper meaning. So we all agree the big book's got other meanings that are deeper.
And you're really not going to be able to control who gets the message and who doesn't,
Yeah.
right? And we
Fully
know
aware
that
of
from
that,
our own
yeah.
experience, that there's lots of people who need it, but who don't get it.
Who don't want it.
Right, it's the people who want it that are gonna hear it.
That's right.
And when people tune in, there's really for me, there's a sense of, if they tune in and turn it off, then they're not.
Yeah.
They're not
And
meant
it's
to
saying
hear it,
that's, yes, exactly.
right? I would hate for us to spend too much energy trying to get people to.
Well, we're warned not to, aren't we?
Right,
Don't
exactly.
waste energy uselessly, and you're gonna waste another chance later,
Exactly,
right?
yeah, so if we focus on knowing that whoever is supposed to hear this message will,
Mhm, yeah.
then we
That's
can-
how I
yeah,
see it. I'm
exactly.
thinking there's some guy somewhere with he eats drywall mud and he can't stop and he's dying and he can't help himself.
Yeah.
There's that guy's there, and I hope he hears this. And he says, "Well, maybe I'll try the big book just before I load a bullet through it."
Yeah.
Which is where I was. Anybody here not contemplate suicide, by the way? I know.
Sorry, that's a joke question, right? I just thought
Don't
that was
answer the question, please.
I thought that was a reality. for
I had
us.
my places and my styles, but I
Yeah.
never had the nerve. And now I'm sitting here today looking around. I'm really, really glad I never had. I like to say I'm past my expiry date by quite a bit now. You know, it left up to my plan. I wasn't having it.
Right.
Not just me talking.
Hi, everybody. Murray, your host. Martha gave such a wonderful rendition of her story that, in answer to a topic we brought up, I decided to cut it in as its own self-standing experience, her personal story. And I hope to find everyone else a chance to record one-on-one their personal stories so we can get to know each other a little bit and you can relate to them, maybe look for yourself in their stories. Anyone can find differences in someone's story. What we learn here and is to look for the similarities, look for the commonalities. This is Martha W. from Muskoka.
It's a step one experience he had, I think. You know, like he went,
Yeah.
he knew.
Okay. I came to a place in my life where I could not go through a day without drinking. Drinking was my way of coping. And I just gave up everything to get away. I actually ran away from home to get away, and was fortunately taken in by a wonderful person who took me in and helped me in the best way she could not to drink. I lasted a year and a half with a couple of bouts in there, but it got to a point in my life where I was more insane without alcohol than I had been with. The only thing for me to do was to run to the liquor store and buy a huge bottle of vodka and just drown all this. I didn't care where it took me. If death came, fine. The day after I drank that huge amount, I went to, in a hungover, still drunken stupor, I went to the 3 places or people that I could blame for my state. First was my family of origin, my mother. Second was the church, in the form of a nun, actually. And the third was my husband and children. I have no idea what I said to them, but I was in such a state of anger that it must have been just horrid for them. When I kind of came round to some state of knowing what I was doing, I don't know why, I called the AA number in our telephone book, which I would never have done. That would be the last resort for me. I wasn't one of those. I wasn't going to a place where people were all worse than me and hanging around and morose and sad. So this angel on the other end of the line, and that's what I refer to her still as, because something in her voice told me
Say who it was.
that if I got to the meeting that night, I might be okay.
Who was it?
Rose.
Of course.
So I went, and the place where I headed for there was a room full of laughter. Certainly that wasn't where I was headed. However, I went back to an information place and found out, that's where the AA meeting was. So,
People, you see, this is what I mean. People out there are going, why are they laughing? They're going, what the hell? Sorry.
so I arrived at the door, and I was greeted with such a feeling of love and care and serenity and welcome and honesty, and truly a place of wonderfulness. And this wasn't like anything like Bill Wilson's experience.
No.
But, and I don't ever pretend to be anything like Bill Wilson, but thank God for him. And that G-O-D, God word, was one that I was very angry with as well. Somehow I must have blocked that out, but I arrived at that meeting. People welcomed me. I threw my arms in the air and said to myself, take me away, I think there's hope. So they said stuff. I didn't hear anything really. I just felt the love and the warmth. And they said, keep coming back. And they said, one day at a time. And they said, there are no dues or fees. And they said, I don't have to say my last name. I don't have to tell anybody anything. I can just come. So I just kept coming day after day after day. Thank God.
And here you sit, sober, still.
That was quite a long number of years, but it's still one day at a time for me. I still hear that message. And I learned I wanted to stop drinking, and not only did I do that, but I found through the big book and working those steps, the 12 steps that are so simple, not always easy, but simple. I have found a way to live sober, a way to live a useful life sober. So that's just my experience about how I got to AA, and what a wonderful program it is. My husband is not an alcoholic, but he subscribes to this. I think he was born with these principles in his head, but it's something that everyone, not just alcoholics or addicts, can live by. So obviously I love Alcoholics Anonymous and everything it's about, and I love the people. I need to connect with the people in AA, because that's where I hear the message, and that's where I get lots of strength and lots of hope. So
Thanks,
that's
Martha.
part of my story.
That's
Thank you.
great. Now let me tell you what part of those I agree with.
Disagree with.
Or disagree with.
Okay.
Oh wait, I can't disagree with your experience. I can't say a thing. I
That's
wasn't there,
right.
was
It's
I?
my experience,
Oh.
Mary. Good luck
Damn
with
it.
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to say their first meeting? That's a good one. Actually.
It was funny when we were listening to that piece, and Bill was sharing about that desire to drink himself to death. I don't know the words that he used, but I went back to that spot, and I can so clearly remember the apartment I was living in, the pub that I was drinking in, and that internal, the internal damnation. I just wanted to drink myself to death. I hated myself. I hated who I was. I hated the world. I couldn't look myself in the mirror. Like I couldn't. I couldn't do that. And I remember going to my first meeting, and ironically, the person who was at the bottom of the stairs at my very first meeting was this gentleman who used to come and sit at my bar. I used to bartend when I was drinking, and he was, and unbeknownst to me, he was 12-stepping me the whole time, and I didn't know it. It didn't register. But he was at the bottom of the stairs of my first meeting, and he used to come and sit at my bar and drink coffee and just talk to me. He would just talk, and he would mention things like, how was the drinking last night? Or he would go, how are you feeling? And I didn't know what he was trying to do was get me to share experiences, and then he would tell me his own drunkalogue and his own story. And only on occasion, when I think back now, did he bring up the 12 steps or AA. He never shoved it down my throat, but he was there at my first meeting. And I sat at the back of that first meeting in the very last row, and another young woman and sat next to me, and I see those two people as the angels that saved my life, because that woman used to drink with me, and she was 2 years sober, and she was 26 years old, and they handed me a big book early on and told me that if I did what was in the big book, I wouldn't have to drink again. And I wasn't sure that I believed them. I'm pretty sure I didn't. I'm trying, just that desperation. I didn't know about treatment centers. I didn't know that there were other options. I just thought I had to drink to survive, because it wasn't so much the chaos of my life when I was drinking that was the problem. It was when I stopped drinking that was the issue, right? It was that sitting around in my house and my skin was crawling, and the anxiety and the simple task of leaving the house and going to work. I didn't know how to do that. Like, I didn't know how to live. And I watched all these other people in the world who seemed to function very normally, who had relationships and who didn't have crisis and chaos constantly in their lives. And yeah, I didn't know how to deal with life without getting drunk. I didn't. And so I hung out with those two people after that first meeting, and they handed me the big book and said, you know, you can stay sober if you do what's in this book. And they asked me what I thought of the meeting. And the first thing I said to them was, you talk about God an awful lot, and I have a real problem with that. I don't like God. I don't like that concept. I couldn't tell you if I was an atheist or an agnostic, but I know I spent a lot of time on bar stools telling you why there couldn't be a God, right? Because of all the shit that went down in the world. But today, because of the 12 steps, I, A, don't drink, and B, practice a spiritual way of life as laid out in the big book, right? And I just see that as such a drastic difference. And so drastically different. And yes, I still deal with anxiety, and I still deal with all the chaos in the world, and I still deal with life, and I often feel overwhelmed by the world, but I have principles that have been laid out by the big book that don't deal with drinking as much as they deal with life, and how to live a spiritual life, and how to walk around this world as a human, but try to raise, the only word I can think of is raising my spiritual vibration, or my energy level, and the frequency. And there's so many terminologies, right?
It's a frequency.
Yeah. And it's scary sometimes, I have to admit. I think that it's scary different now than it was then. When I first got here, just raising that frequency meant being clear of the alcohol. Right? Not having that block of the alcohol and the drugs, right? Because that blocks the oh God, our terminology, sorry, bumper stickers, sunlight of the spirit.
No, use as much of that. I want to hear as much old hacky slogans as you guys remember, because remember, no one out there knows what the hell we're talking about, so it's the first time they heard it.
Well, it's that sunlight of the spirit, right? It's that connection with your higher power. I don't want to be blocked from that anymore. But I didn't know that's what I was doing when I came to my first AA meeting. Yeah. I didn't know. I had no idea. And so today, what that means is very different than it did when I first got here. And now what it means is what does it mean? It means trying to live as spiritually as I can. And that's one of the reasons I'm here today, is because I feel that this is another practice of that, right? Carrying that message. Our 12th step is carrying the message to other alcoholics and to other people who are suffering. So I feel like I just blabbered.
No. We'll cut it all out.
Yeah, cut me out whenever you're
I made up my mind 7 minutes ago.
But it is. It's that the different blocks. The different blocks is the process.
More
right?
will be revealed.
More does, yeah. More is revealed. More layers of the onion get peeled away, and I am not. This physical body isn't even the same as it was when I first got here.
How could it be?
Right? But definitely.
What the hell? Sorry?
That's okay. Apparently, I'm supposed to be cut off now.
No. He
But-
had his too.
Yeah. But I am not internally the same person I was when I got here. in any shape or form. I'm just not.
I gotta say, I've seen you turn at least 2 different ways since you got here. I first met you, right?
Yeah, and that was only 8
Things-
years ago. Yeah.
Things have happened, and it's like, you're not the same person, no way.
No, I was
Neither am
telling.
I, right?
Yeah, I was telling somebody at the meeting after the meeting that I used to be a really angry person. He just kind of looked at me and I went, "Yeah, I know." I am a lot less angry than I used to be. Yeah, even sober. So, yeah, I'm so glad to be sober today. Yeah.
There's a lot in there, thanks, Kate.
Yeah. Thanks, Kate.
I love when things, you listen to Joe Rogan, right?
Yes.
The reason I'm making this podcast is so no one has to keep hearing me say, Joe Rogan told me, and this is what you need to know. 'Cause he does podcasting, he kind of helped invent it and shit like that. And they just, frankly, they're normal people. They get high, they sit around, they talk about shit all day long, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what I like, is I don't want this, like I said, the AA tradition, right? Don't feel like you
He's-
blathered and don't feel like you cut somebody off, because it's a conversation.
The way
Oh, okay.
he does it, if
okay.
you've never heard it, it's a lot like if you've ever listened to Howard Stern.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's way more in someone's living room.
Right.
No
Joe
commercial.
Rogan is just, he sits there and he shoots the shit and
Yeah.
Right.
he'll say, I don't know fuck all, and you hear him typing on the computer, they
Right.
type everything into Ask Google.
Right.
And,
Right.
and they talk about it.
It's really the Google show, because
Yeah.
It-
I've heard a lot of people, and not just those in recovery, talk about him. Like
Mm.
he's great.
He has nothing to do with recovery.
He
Yeah.
has
I mean,
guys
not-
on,
he
like
didn't start
spiritual
it.
guys too, like,
Right.
yeah.
He's a mixed martial artist. He's a jiu-jitsu fighter. He was on TV on
Fear
news
Factor.
radio and the Fear Factor
Oh,
host,
right.
the UFC announcer.
Right.
Wow.
But he's the male Oprah. He's coming up hard. He used to be getting, like, he had a laptop with snowflakes coming down the screen, and him and his buddy were sitting on his, he's got some money, right? He's got a few dollars. In Hollywood, it's now, last time I heard it was 500,000 views per episode, and they said he spiked just before Christmas, 11 million views for an episode hit.
Really?
Yeah.
That's great, though.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he's just a nice guy. If you ever heard an episode for 5 minutes, you're gonna say, more kids need to hear this.
Yeah, he's one of those guys you can walk up to and start shooting shit, but.
Yeah. Well, he hates that because everybody thinks that, and they come up to him and he can't. Live his life.
Right, he can't go get a coffee at Tim's.
This gang
Be
of guys
careful
you call
what you
Death
do.
Squad, right? They just kind of come out. They're real cool people, but yeah. But he's not one of these interviewers that softballs questions. He's a jiu-jitsu fighter. He's going to strangle you. He's going to get the truth out of you verbally. Like you show up with how in interviews some people say, ask them a question for 7 minutes and the answer is always one of their talking points. This is one of the things that can.
yeah.
Not him. They says no. You're 3 hours. You got to pee sooner or later. Answer the question, right? And it's coming at it and coming at it. And the guy. So people who are like that, the 7 points of don't last. They don't even come. They won't even come on the show. That's what
So
I
that's
want.
what
I
you
want
want.
that.
Sure.
That kind of round table,
Yeah.
just shoot the shit.
Yeah.
The other
Right.
thing is when we're going to a meeting, and it's starting already, when you go in a meeting, I always say it when I speak, I start out clunky and scared
Yeah,
because Murray's in the way, and then at some point Murray slides over here in the message.
Yeah.
I call it God, whatever, that's my word, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that happens in the rooms, you see it in the meetings, right? And that's what I would like to see here, and then people can turn it on, and there's some very sensitive people, I know very sensitive people, and they're going to hear that and go, holy shit.
Yeah.
Power takes tension to power, right?
Yeah.
And we have something here.
And you can hear that in people's voices when they share. Like I find I can hear it
When they've hit that.
when they hit that.
Yeah.
Right? It's almost like the.
You can almost take a meter, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you can hear it. You can hear the shift in their voice.
I
You're
can't
shaking
do-
your head.
I can't do it in the meetings.
Doesn't
You
mean
can't?
that's all for
You
everybody.
know what I mean?
no.
Like I have all, that's the problem, I'm thinking too far ahead when I'm but then I'll get sidetracked by
Right.
somebody, good or bad.
right.
And
Sure,
last
you
couple
can.
meetings, there's been some really bad, and it throws me right off, and I can't.
Yeah.
And when you say bad, what do you mean?
Just rambling, nonsensical bullshit, and
Oh,
then
okay.
just. try to-
Not recovery focused.
Yeah, but if you were full of
Right.
shit, that's
Right.
probably what would come out. So
That's
It's
true.
pretty
Get done.
accurate. Yeah. Good point. Good
It's
point.
not full of shit. Maybe it's not full of shit, but it's not. It's just my dog died, and
Right.
Yeah.
That
Current
the
events.
same old.
whippersnipper.
Because our
That's right.
meetings aren't intended as a therapy session, and I think that
Absolutely
that
not.
lesson gets lost
Say
somewhere.
that again.
Our meetings are not intended as a therapy session.
Thank you. What are they intended?
Well, how I understood it, when I was told, it was about carrying the message,
Right.
right?
Of
Like,
Alcoholics
The
Anonymous.
design
Chris,
for
Chris
the.
knows exactly what I'm talking about. Sorry.
Yeah. That's where the guys like Chris Raymer come in, right?
Yeah.
With his
Oh yeah.
and he's very opinionative, But
he shares his experience, his
yeah,
opinion in
he
there.
says, and he's the person that says we don't go to rooms to puke our problems on the floor and expect everyone else to clean it up.
That's right.
Yeah.
I heard
Because
very
that happens.
early, we don't puke on someone else's doorstep to make ourselves feel better.
Right.
And we are encouraged to have a person that we can talk to, who we call sponsors.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And those people can say, hey, come on, this is about recovery in whatever, our Alcoholics Anonymous 12-step program. If we need therapy, we're encouraged to go elsewhere
Yep.
for help, but this is our focus. We also have to be really careful, especially I find in this small town at meetings, that we share in a general way.
Yes.
And we save the real nitty gritty for our sponsor. Like we don't go in and say, well, I was sleeping with somebody's husband last week and
Yeah.
I'll
And
tell
he's
you who it
sitting over
is.
there.
and-
Well, I mean, especially I had a relationship. My ex-husband was in AA, right? And I had to be careful about how I shared that separation because the last thing I'd want to do is keep him from coming to the rooms, right? Because in case that.
And that was real awkward because I'm friends with both of you
Yeah.
today, and for
Yeah.
a long time I didn't know if I was friends with anybody or not.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, because you got to be careful in the
Yes,
rooms,
yes,
right?
yes. And
Yeah.
I totally respect both of you for what you did, and now we're
Yeah.
all kind of back with the new norm.
Because this is a very small town.
It is.
You think it's a small town, join AA. Jesus.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely, that's what I.
But that's, well, it's anonymity too, right? That's why we have those. I wanted to read, maybe I'll read into it or find somebody reading the 12 traditions, because we're not, this isn't an AA meeting, but I personally am bound by the 12 traditions. I
Yes.
live by them. So I think I'm going to read them into the record, so people are going to hear us drawing back from certain points, and well,
Yeah.
why didn't they chase that guy down? Because the traditions are like a,
It's a safety net.
yeah, it
Yeah.
prevents,
And we have to be
Keeps
careful.
us safe from ourselves.
Yeah, from ourselves
Yeah.
and others and everything else.
Yeah.
We have to make sure that the rooms of AA and AA itself is a safe place
For anyone who has a desire to stop
Yeah.
drinking,
for anyone,
Anyone.
anyone, anywhere.
regardless of what they've done.
even if they're, yeah.
Yeah.
No, and
That's
it's,
That's hard for some people to swallow, right? Right. Like, because if they've been convicted of certain offenses, right? Yeah.
hey, I'll tell you a story in a general way. I sat with a guy, and to me, those rooms are the little cone of silence, or the little, that's a sacred place, and I wouldn't allow anything to happen to anybody in there if it's in my power. And I'm in the room, and I know the guy who sits down next to me, and his hand's in a cast, and it's, the cast is up to his elbow, and it's holding his fingers in place, because he had been, okay, he was a sex offender and had molested a young baby. Damaged the baby, and the family of the baby got a hold of him and damaged him. And I was sitting next to him a few days after it happened, and he went to the meeting, and it was a normal puke on the table, what you might expect. And I sat and I didn't show any reaction. I think I was very normal. We got outside. He turned to say something to me about the weather or something. I said, "Get the fuck away from me, because you're safe in there. You're in very serious trouble standing here in front of me. Just go home." And he went home. You know, like that's the length I'm willing to go to protect that room.
Yes.
You know, listen. I walked in and I had information that somebody put on the table. You better not give it to me. In the room, I don't know, but outside, no, go fuck yourself. I'm not getting, you know, because NA then it gets into a whole thing of who has what on them and who's got previous convictions. It's very complicated, right?
Yeah.
I went down a rabbit hole pretty quick.
Well, but that's the thing. We have to remember we're humans, right?
And allow for
right-
that.
Yeah, exactly. Which I think is why the traditions are there, because
Yeah.
they're based on spiritual principles, so that we're reminded that this is a spiritually safe place.
Exactly.
And every person who walks in the door, I mean, it was hard, and it has been hard to watch the people come back into the rooms who I know have committed offenses, who've committed abuse, who have murdered people, who have stolen, who
Been abused.
right, been abused or whatever, and then still shake their hand at the end of the day, right, and hold their hand at prayer at the end of the meeting.
But that's who we work
But
with.
that's why we're there, is because it's a spiritually safe place.
Yes.
But that's what the traditions are there for,
And
because
spirit-
we're humans.
And they're
Exactly.
not. Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, they're not new traditions. This is where I'm going with
Yeah,
this
yeah.
podcast. If I get past the 8 hours and I can do this, you know, I want to have the basics of the program in the book. This is what is true. And then I want to have, this is what Murray's found out. And then I want to have this is what Murray's Rabbit Hole told them, right? And the traditions are not new, and it says right in the booking process, booking's not new. It's all what we were told, Book of James or something like that. I've got to chase that down. There's either the Gnostic Gospels have some of it. I get the words confused. The Nag Hammadi and these Dead Sea Scrolls essentially have. They got the design for living in there. This is nothing new here. We're talking.
Right.
So it's going to take time to show.
You can hear new psychologists, and I heard a guy on the radio on CBC not too long ago, and shit, half the stuff he was saying is in this book.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's something we haven't touched on. This is Jungian psychology, right? Isn't it? Can we say that in this room? It is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't know, is it?
That's what Dr. Jung said. He's in the
Some of
book.
it, yeah. I think it's
No, it's not all him, but it's his understanding. It was
Yeah.
what came out, right?
Yeah.
And it's very useful. I mean, it's not my father's fault. Or it's not, I got to deal with my problem. Okay, that's good. You want to play a tape? A clip?
Sure.
You want to take a break? You want to smoke?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, take a break. Let it
I
run.
think it's just you and me, Jen. Isn't it? That smoke?
The 12 Traditions, page 564 in Alcoholics Anonymous. 1. Our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon AA unity. 2. For our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God, as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants. They do not govern. 3. The only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. 4. Each group should be autonomous except in matters affecting other groups or AA as a whole. 5. Each group has but one primary purpose, to carry its message to the alcoholic who still suffers. 6. An AA group ought never endorse, finance, or lend the AA name to any related facility or outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, and prestige divert us from our primary purpose. 7. Every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. 8. Alcoholics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. 9. AA, as such, ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. 10. Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues, hence the AA name ought never be drawn into public controversy. 11. Our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. 12. Anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities. You never want to ask someone to do something you wouldn't do yourself, and I have been fortunate enough to speak in public about my story of recovery and with my experience with the book, that I actually have a recording. I'm so ego-driven. I have a 2-year-old recording I'm going to add in here to give you some idea of my personal experience as far as recovery and my life, what it was like, what happened to me, and what it's like today is the general structure of most talks you're going to hear. So here's my story. You're welcome to it. I get really uncomfortable doing these, so you can bear with me. I'll probably rattle for a while, and maybe I'll start to make some sense after that. My name's Murray. I'm an alcoholic. I'm sober today by the grace of God that I got and found from a design for living that I found through the use of the 12 steps that's in that book, Alcoholics Anonymous. And I found the book Alcoholics Anonymous by coming to these meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. And the fellowship carried me along until I was able to do the work, and make that contact, to have that spiritual experience, to survive today and maybe try to make a difference. I get so scared. I'm here to tell you about what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now in a general way. I don't want to get into too many specifics, but I want you to understand that I'm not other than or better than. I'm just a drunk that was going to die and didn't know any better. And something changed, and today I find myself useful. I'm able to help out, try to carry the message. What I found out about this program, about this disease, is it's a two-part disease. It's an obsession of the mind and an allergy of the body. And I say it often enough, I get a little sick of my own voice, but it needs to be said, and it needs to be said often, because we forget, right? Our mind helps us to not remember what it was like. The allergy of the body, for me, and for what it's described in the book, is it's an abnormality. That means I don't digest alcohol like a normal person. That's actually seems to be the definition of it. And when I have the first drink, I want more. That's the allergic reaction. I'm also, you hear me say lots of times, I'm allergic to cats too. And when I get around cats, it makes my eyes buggy out and turn red and water and itchy. And if a cat scratches me, it swells up. And so that's an allergy too, and that's the reaction to the allergy. And I get hay fever, and it's much the same. And you hear people with strawberry allergies and fish allergies, and it makes their throat swell up, and that's their reaction. The difference for me being allergic to cats and alcohol is that I don't go at 5 to 6 and drive like a maniac to the pet store to get there just in time before it closes and get a cat just with money I don't have so I can rub it on my face and get that reaction. That's not what I do about cats. But I do that with alcohol. I'll spend money I don't have. I'll steal from people that I love. I'll do whatever I have to do to get that next drink, and I have, and there's a lot of damage. And so there's something else going on besides the physical allergy. That's the mental obsession. The obsession, to me, is like a little snake in the back of my mind that says, "Go ahead, it'll be different. It'll be all right. This time, it's that pet store down the street you've been hanging out. That's a rough crowd. It's those Persian cats you've been hanging out with. It's you know, if you only had black cats in your house, you'd be okay, you know." And it's like that with alcohol. I tell myself every story, and I tried every way to stop drinking, and it just never amounted to anything. It only got worse. So, if I'm allergic to alcohol, and I never got exposed to alcohol, I would never know it. So, what I like to say here is I grew up in a house where there was drinkers, and in the time when I grew up in the 60s, everybody drank. Seemed like lots of people drank. That's just the way it was, you know. Used to sit around the house. I grew up in Port Sydney near here, and it was country, man. People, you had 2 channels maybe if it wasn't bad weather on the television, and the radio was back to the Bible or whatever after 6 o'clock, and not a lot happened. The discussion was important, and we'd sit around, and it was quiet. It was dull, but then in the summer and, well, I guess more in the winter too, people would come and visit. And when they visit, they'd bring a bottle with them, or a bottle would come out, a case of beer. And then people changed. People, I don't know if you remember, everybody here's of that age. And, you know, things just got better. Stories got told. People would laugh. I mean, you get a guy with a guitar, it's a party. They come from all over, right? And there was a lot of fun with alcohol. And the story of my first drink is something I've been told. I think I remember it, but I really don't, because I was somewhere between 2 and 3 years old. And somebody was pouring shots on the counter of rye, and he turned one way to see what they wanted for mixing the drink, and little Murray went around the other way and grabbed a shot and downed it, and you know, spitting and choking, and everybody started to laugh, of course, right? And, "Oh, stop," because I was reaching for the next one, right? I wanted already another one, and that's just a kid, right? But if you need to get that first allergic reaction by being exposed, that was it early on. And when I got here, I got my 1-month chip, and that made me really think about my 30 days. I had 30 days with no alcohol, and I tried to think back over the years to when I'd had 30 days without one drink of alcohol. I couldn't think at the time. I mean, honestly, there probably was, but there was always, it wasn't like, oh, getting drunk at 7 years old. It wasn't that. It was, you know, finishing off a beer bottle, go get Dad a beer, open it up, the cost of delivery was a little sip, right? Just developing that allergy and developing that way of life. And I'm not blaming anybody from that time. It was just the way things were. And people are still alcoholics today with all we know about alcoholism and all we know about drinking. It still happens. It's the disease. It got activated early and often in me. And by the time I was 8 or 9 years old, it was a little more deliberate. And by the time I was a teenager, it was pretty methodical, eh? I had a way, I had a method, I knew how many beer could go missing, I knew how many shots could come out of a bottle. I was never dumb enough to replace it with water, eh? I just, you know, take a little bit here, a little bit there. I wasn't greedy, I just wanted what I wanted. And by the time I was 18, I can remember there was a day, it's like Bill says in Bill's story, he had arrived. My day was, I had a paying job, I had a, like growing up work, I had an apartment of my own, a little place, I had a bottle of rye on the counter, a bag of weed on the coffee table, I had beer in the fridge, I had the Who on the stereo, man, it was good. That's how I wanted it. That was my life. That's what I wanted. And I worked pretty hard for years after that to keep it that way. And I'm a determined guy, so I kept it that way despite what else I might have done with that time and that money. I did what I wanted, and what I wanted was just drink and use, you know. So that's what it was like. What happened was it got worse, and I got married, and as long as I was spending money and nobody was getting hurt but me, there was a woman then with her 2 small kids. I'm their stepdad. They hate me like a real dad, and we got married, and she started to notice, and she started to comment, and then in a very nice way. It was my money I was spending, but it was there. The pressure started. It wasn't as much fun anymore, and I more and more methodical about my drinking, about how much was just enough so I could still pay the bills. I remember the conversation outside the beer store with 2 little kids in the back there, and it was middle of winter. I was unemployed, and she didn't, I don't know if she was on mother's allowance or had somebody who was welfare, whatever it was. Things were not good, and we were 24, 25. And we pulled in the beer store, and we're going to buy a case of beer, and we barely had enough food to eat. And the kids said, what's going on? Why are we going here? And my wife said, Daddy's got to get his treat. And they said, well, we didn't get no treat, you know. And that hit me hard, and I never let it show, but that hit me hard. And I just mean to say that this disease started slowly creeping into my life, and it was about that time that I thought, well, it's costing too much money. This is kind of dumb. Maybe I should grow up and just stop drinking. So I tried that. I tried not drinking. And if you talk to me in that time, what are you doing? I'd say, I'm not drinking. I'm not working. It's not that I'm working. It's not that I'm looking at going fishing. It's not that I'm doing this, I'm doing that. What I am doing is this activity called not drinking. And I made sure everybody knew, and how hard it was, and how wonderful I was for doing it. Nobody could appreciate enough how much I was not drinking. And that lasted about 2 years and 3 months and 4 days and 6 hours. That number's bullshit. It's just, you know, it was a specific amount of time, and finally I lost it, and I started drinking again. And not a lot at first, you know. I was at home, I was away, working up north, but I knew it was coming, and I had a good go. I drank a lot, and got home, and that was it, and I wasn't going to drink anymore. I'd had my fun, I was done, I was home, I'm there to be responsible, you know. But the thoughts were there, you know. The thoughts were there, and it was a couple months later, and I had a 26er rum, and then the thoughts were there, and then later on I had a little more, and before you know it, I'm right back to where I was, you know. Geographic cure, moved my family down to London, took hostages. This is the way I think about it now. I took them with me, you know, and she said, I said to her, give it a year, right? Give it a year, and I'll be fine, you know. And got down there, and she gave it 365 days, and we packed the truck, and she came back. And I stayed down there for 2 more years, and in that time, of course, the progression of the disease kept moving forward. And I got more and more depressed, and the thing, it's so hard to pin down that one moment. There were several, but one of the ones that really sticks in my mind was leaving Huntsville. I was working 3 in the afternoon to 11 at night shift. So I'd leave here 9 o'clock in the morning, and you know that hadn't had any drink since the night before. You know, anything else left to smoke, and I was driving in the city in a 4-hour run, sweating and talking to myself and getting the way we get when we don't have anything to do. And the closer I got to London, the further I got from home, and the more hopeless I felt. I knew there was going to be at least 2 more weeks till anything good was going to happen in my life. There was no money, there was no love, there was no anything except work and sleep. Wishing it was elsewhere, otherwise. And then by the time I got down there, I was in such a state that I hit a panic attack. And I don't know if anybody else knows. I guess that's what they call it. I couldn't breathe. I started hyperventilating. There was a weight on my chest, and I just sat in the car in the parking lot where I was living and breathed until I finally calmed down enough to go to work. And I knew something was wrong. I felt I was going to die. So I made an appointment to see the company doctor, and I described myself, you know, I was honest. I was scared because I knew not drinking wasn't the answer. Drinking wasn't the answer. Holy shit, now what, right? I had thought about ending my life. I thought about killing myself. I had different little bridge abutments picked out on the way up north and on the way back. Which one's to hit? Do you leave the seatbelt on so it looks like an accident, or you take it off and maybe there's no insurance, you know? These kind of decisions. I remember at Christmas about that same time on Main Street here, stepping out and not seeing a car that just about hit me, and I stopped and it missed me, and I remember thinking, almost, because that would have been a real accident. That would have been all right. I didn't care anymore. I didn't want to be like this. And so the doctor went through my symptoms with me and said, yeah, you're an alcoholic, no question about it. What do you want to do about it? And he listed 3 options. He says, you can go to the treatment center. I think the first thing he says, you can go to AA. And I said, no, I don't want to do that. What else you got? You know, don't know why. I had never heard AA. I had heard of it, but, you know, didn't know anything about it. And what else you got? He said, you can go to treatment. That's in-house treatments. Nah, what else you got? And he said, go see a doctor, a psychiatrist, psychologist, whatever he was. And I said, go for that. And I sat down with him and told him the same thing. And I was as honest as I could be. And he said, you're an alcoholic. So there was no question of it. I mean, thinking about powerlessness, do I walk around here saying, am I powerless? Hell no, I knew long before. Before I ever stopped drinking, I knew. And, but what am I going to do about it, right? And I tried the doctor, and I couldn't bring myself to go to treatment. So finally I decided I need to do this AA thing, because nothing else was working, and I didn't want to die and have people standing around the funeral home. This is the way I thought. I didn't want people standing around the funeral home saying, that dumbass, he didn't even try AA. I wanted to prove to them it wasn't going to work. I never knew who them were, but, you know. And so I went, and I didn't go right away. It's a story on itself. I called the number, and I said to the lady, where do you have a meeting here? I told her my address, and she said, there's one tonight at 8 o'clock right here. It's right near. Oh, what about tomorrow night? What else you got? And she told me about tomorrow night. I said, what about then the Friday? She said, never mind. You got enough information for me. And she hung up. She said goodbye, and she cut me off, you know. And I thought, that bitch, that's, you know, it's not very nice. And I didn't go to a meeting that night. I called the next night, though, because I knew I had to do something. And I called, and they gave me the address, and I left. It was an 8 o'clock meeting. I left home at 7 o'clock, started driving around the neighborhood, and I drove around the block and found the church. And then I don't know what time it was, you know, timing-wise, it was getting close to 7:30, and I drove through the parking lot and kept on going, and then I drove in after a while and parked and went inside and went in the basement and found the karate club across the hallway. And I guess that, you know, it's like 7:30, there's nobody here yet. You know, what's going on? This can't be a very good place. And I went out in the car and I sat there, and you know what it is. Nobody comes to a meeting till 5:10, something usually, right? And this place was no different. And I was going to leave at 5:02 if nobody showed up. And man, they came from every direction. It was a men's meeting. There was like 75 guys at that meeting, and they all showed up. Hi, how are you to everybody, and shaking each other's hands, and smiling, friendly. Well, they got the karate club, and they got these guys. Where's the AA meeting going to be? I don't get it, right? So I followed the crowd in. I guess I just allowed the hi, how are yous and that to take me inside, and sat down. And old guy next to me says, your first meeting? And I said, yeah. I don't know how he knew, right? Shaking and sweating and carrying on. And just so they called out first step, third tradition, like often gets done, and it went around the group. And I heard a lot of wah, 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 wah. I really liked the way they read how it works, and then another guy, 12 steps, it sounded very otherworldly. I felt kind of different just listening to that. And then it went around the meeting, and there was these guys with 30 years sobriety and 25 years, and how they, you know, they slept on beaches in Mexico and done all this. All I'd ever done was drink beer in Muskoka, right? I never really knew much about all this other stuff. But then it got around to one guy. He said, you know, I got my year medallion last week, and I got my truck running again, and I got my license back, and my wife let me move back in. And I looked at him, and I thought, oh, there's a guy like me, you know. And so that was the identification. That's when it caught me, right, a little bit. And after the meeting, guys give you your number, and you know, and it was pretty cool. And I called a guy one night at midnight just to see if he'd answer the phone, because I was working till 11, right? So noon or midnight I got home, and I called him, and of course I woke him up. And we had the strangest conversation. He said, "How'd you like that meeting?" I said, "It was pretty good." He says, "Well, you should go again tomorrow night." And I said, "Well, because I thought I'd been inoculated. I thought like you go to a meeting and then you have it, right?" And I don't know what I thought. But that's how it seemed. And everything I mentioned, he said, "Well, then that's good." He said, I said, "I feel really good. I almost feel like celebrating." He said, "Well, then you should go to a meeting." And everything he said, I ended up going to a meeting. So before I hung up, he got me to commit to go to a meeting the next day, and that was a little smaller meeting, and it was like this with just chairs but in a circle, and I got a newcomer chip, and I was off. I was something drew me in. People that were smiling and saying it like me, I guess, and it drew me in, and I started having a different kind of thinking. Instead of thinking about not drinking, I was thinking about going to meetings. And it was like a little geography lesson. Get a map out, find out where the meetings are. It was very absorbing, and it was good for me. And London's a big town. You can go to 3 meetings a day there if you got the time. I was doing 2 a day during the week, 3 on the weekend. I stayed down there. I wasn't coming back up here. When I finally did, I started to get to know people here, and that's what happened. And I can remember, though, the feeling of, okay, I'm here. I've finally done it. This is it. I've done what needs doing. Because for years I heard, first steps, beginning, you ought to go to AA, or people would say it in their backhanded way, the way we try to help without trying to say this is what you should do. And I finally did the biggest thing in my life, the hardest thing in my life, was get to meetings. And I went to a lot of meetings, and I sat there and I kept waiting for somebody to sprinkle the fairy dust on me so I wouldn't want to drink, but I kept wanting to drink. I kept thinking, this is all fun and games, but I'd feel so much better if I could just start drinking. And I went around, and there was a lot of fellowship, and there was a lot of keep coming backs, and I set a course for 90 and 90, and I was looking at joining a group, and that's where I got that 1 month ship that was such a miracle for me. And on a Saturday, I went to a meeting, and it was what it was called see, what I wasn't getting was any introduction to the program we covered. All I was getting was meetings and fellowship and lots of keep coming backs and debating, and people with cool sayings and interesting little turn of phrase, and people are pretty smart here, and it's very interesting. But I wasn't getting any better. I didn't realize that, but until I got to a Joe and Charlie meeting, it's where they play those tapes for Joe and Charlie, and Google it if you don't know who I mean. It's worth it. And they're a couple old boys that go through the book, and they outline the program of recovery very clearly, very slowly, very methodically, and so then I had something to sink my teeth into, some kind of work I could do, and I took that as far as I could. And I mean, it's not like it happened overnight. This is over a period of about 4 years. Lots of meetings. By then, I'd moved back up here, and I was doing the AA thing, and it was good. It was good, and keep coming back. But I saw a lot of personalities before principles. I saw a lot of fighting, and I saw a lot of, how we talk when we're talking in generalities about, we don't really say I'm talking about that asshole over wherever, but they're saying it, right? And my group there on Saturday, they just fell apart. They were fighting and infighting, and it was brutal. And this whole time, poor Murray just doesn't want to drink, right? And I drifted along and hung on, and I can't say I didn't get better. I did do the steps. I did do a 4-step. I did a big, long book that was about 18 pages, a dozen pages long of my whole life story, and I went over it with my sponsor, and it was pretty traumatic, and I got it done. And things did get better, and I started to make amends in my own haphazard way, but 4 years went by, and it was just kind of, I was losing my interest, and I slowed down on the meetings, and I stopped going, and I haven't had to drink alcohol, and I'd like to say I haven't done anything else, but I have. I went back out, a little bit of weed, a few little pills, this and that, right? And without the grace of God, we got nothing. I have nothing. And I let it slip. I turned my back. I started looking for other things. Old Carl used to tell me, anything you do as well as the higher power is fine, but anything you do instead of a higher power becomes your higher power. And that's what I can tell you, that's what happened to me. And so in around 4 years, I went to a Saturday meeting, and there was this couple showed up, never seen him before, and they sat down, rough-looking old fella, and a nice girl. And he opened his mouth out, and he started talking about being recovered, about how he'd been a loser, about how he had nothing left to live for, and how he just wanted to work the steps once, and how he'd run into this guy that told him that he'd been booked. And I'm thinking, what's he even talking? That's not even a very good word. He says, yeah, and he mentioned it, and then after the meeting, one of the ladies with me in the meeting started talking to them, and I was cleaning up, and I went over and I kind of sidled next to them and listened, and they were talking about this process of going through the book, 101, about producing this spiritual experience, the way the book says to do it, this method. And I kept listening, I was standing, and finally he turns to me and he says, do you want to get booked? I said, yeah, without even thinking. We both jumped on it, Bev and I, and so the girl took Bev through it, and the guy took me through, and we were doing like 3 hours at a time, 2 or 3 times on the weekend. He was only coming up on the weekends, right? So we'd do it maybe a couple of weeks or a week in between. And it took me all that spring, it was 2001, and into late September 2001. A lot of things changed for a lot of people in that time, and things changed for me, man. I got this contact with a higher power, and things started happening. And anything I say is going to sound like bullshit. I really don't want to get into it, but little things happen, and I got a chance to share this with other people now, and this higher power is here for me, and this higher power lets me try and help others, and I'm obligated, because the guys that helped me and the ones that tried to help me, I can't pay them back. I can never pay this debt back. First of all, they're dead. Second of all, you can't pay back. We have to pay forward here. That's what I found. I have to carry the message, try to carry the message. It doesn't say I'm ever going to succeed, but, I worked with a couple of guys in the last year, and they just took off like wildfire. And the product of that little bit of work I did is right in this room tonight. I mean, there's no end to how far this spiritual thing can go, because somebody helps me and I help them, and the book just leads the way. Anytime I think it's anything other than God, other than the higher power, I'm off the topic. I'm off track. I have to remind myself of that. I have to be reminded of that. And I use the tools. I mean, I laugh when people say, what step are you on? Oh, I'm on step 3 still. It's like it says, it's a kit of tools laid at our feet, right? It's like I have a kit of tools in my truck. It's got a hammer and a saw and a tape measure and a drill. And I don't walk around saying I'm on tape measure all day, do I? I take out the tape measure, I make a mark with the pencil, I get a line and I cut it. I use these steps the way people use tools. When I need to let it go, right? I got to turn it over. I got to stop and listen, right? Like step 11 for me has been such a, I don't know how to explain it. It's just it's such a brilliant step. I mean, I ask for help and then I listen for the answer, right? A lot of meditation gets complicated. A lot of meditation is reading, and that's good. I mean, there's nothing wrong with studying, there's nothing wrong with reading, but for me, sooner or later, I got to shut up and listen to the answer. And I did a lot of formal meditation, a lot of sitting, traditional kind of meditation, and that was like not drinking. You know what I mean? That was like deliberate and hard to do, and I got some results, but today my meditation is more, I get up in the morning and I ask for help. I ask that God reveal His will to me, and once He reveals that will to me, that He allows me the courage and strength to carry that will out. So, and then I get in my truck and go to work, and on a good day, I'll just start to drive, no radio, and the phone don't ring, and I just drive, and I just let it, I try not to think. I just see what comes up, see what's up. And most days are pretty straightforward, what's the right thing to do. I think the hard part comes when there's a choice to be made and a decision to be made. And that's when I got to work harder at this program. That's when I got to work harder at this contact with God, because, I mean, it tells us we're weaker now. I mean, just look at the math. You're older now. I'm older now than I was. My disease is more progressed than it was. I'm less able to fight it, so I need more help. I have to do more work. I have to work hard at this contact. So rather than go to less meetings, I can't say I go to more. I go to about the same, but I do other things for people. I work one-on-one with others. I come here, and when you people ask me to speak, I get so nervous, but I feel like I'm doing what I got to do. I'm doing what I'm asked to do. I never say no. I never say no. I can't. And all I can hope for you guys and anybody who wants to listen is that you get the same thing. Just do the work. It's available to any of us. I never met anybody too dumb to get this program. I met a lot of people too smart, like what you said there. It's easy to complicate it, and I'm a complicated person. You know, I've tied this thing up in knots, untied it, tied it up again, and now as soon as I start thinking twice about something, I just try and do backflips to keep from making it worse. You know, and it always comes back to do the right next thing, shut up and listen, and the answers always come in time to work for. So that's all I got. Thank you.
You know it's so cold outside, a bird can hardly fly. You know it's so cold outside, a bird can hardly fly. So I'm going back inside, let this winter pass me by. So cold today, a man can't feel his toes. You know it's so cold today, a man can't feel his toes. Think I'll go back inside, need to warm these weary bones. Lord, pray I recover from this cold that's clinging to my soul. You know that it's so cold today, the rooster he won't crow. It's so cold today, the rooster he won't crow. Think I'll go back inside, got me no place else to go. It's so cold today, bird can hardly fly. You know that it's so cold today, a bird can hardly fly. Think I'll go back inside, let this winter pass me by. Recover from this cold that's clinging to my soul.
That's pretty appropriate for February in Muskoka, Ontario, Canada. That's Robin Gray, The Winter Blues. Now back to our broadcast.
2 of us. Yeah. Out of 11, there's 2, and the one guy I still talk to all the time.
Yeah.
He's a solid little fucker. He's only 21, and he has embraced this with everything he can.
Oh,
he
the lucky
is
young guy.
He needed it, so in treatment he figured out he was an alcoholic as well.
Which is rare, right? Because most of the drug addicts
He
not
couldn't believe it.
necessarily do that.
He was so angry.
Yeah.
He was so angry, and he'd been there for 3 weeks before I got there, and he was still just a ball of anger. And he left that place, and he just
Ran with it.
he's out of control with the message.
See, and where I got sober, there was 6 of us so the year that I got sober, there was 6 of us who all got 1-year medallions.
Wow.
I'm the only one left.
Yeah.
I didn't want
Really?
to say into jail.
Yeah.
You're the only one left in the program?
Yeah, and some have died,
Right.
and some we don't know where they are.
Wow.
And one of them, I went back 3 times for repeat 1-year medallions with him. And I told him I'm not coming back for another one, not for 1 year. And he's no longer around, I don't know where he is. Yeah, so out of 6,
Yeah,
right?
it happens.
And that's, the reality is that not everybody gets it who needs it. And I don't know what the difference is. Like I can't think my way through
There's no-
logically why
there's
some
no
get it
logic.
and some
You
don't.
can't do it.
I don't think
Yeah.
there is any logic.
I want, yeah.
But, you know, how many people we've seen come back and come back and come back and have made it too.
Exactly,
Never-
exactly, and that's
So-
it. I've also met men
So
that
there's
say that, you know, there was one guy in Barrie area when I did some when I lived down there. He had 20 years of sobriety when I met him, and he said for 20 years he would come in and out.
Yeah.
So he'd been coming to AA for 40 years.
But he'd still been sober longer than he'd been drinking.
You all know Gary, right?
Not quite, but close.
No?
Yeah, no, because he was coming in and out of AA for 20 years and
Yeah.
using.
Yeah, but
And then, so there
But
was
he'd
time
be-
before that.
Oh, 'cause-
And then he was 25 years sober, or 20 sometimes, so over 20 when I met him. And so he was pretty old. But I guess what I'm saying is that we don't know,
You never.
right? We don't
We
know
not know.
how long it'll take for somebody.
and what's going to trigger can come up like a black hole.
Yeah.
We have a
And-
black hole somewhere
We
and
all know
grab us
Gary,
and
right?
off we go.
Yeah.
You know little Gary, my
Yep.
buddy there with the beard. 30 years he stumbled along. He known about that program almost 30 years, and now he's a solid man. He's done the book.
Yep.
He's right in the middle of it. He
Wonderful.
moved here. He got off the train. I said I'd meet him because I've known him since I was 8 years old. Right?
Wow.
Yeah, and he's the first guy ever told me he went to an AA meeting and seemed to help him. I was 18. He thought I needed to know that. And he stayed drunk for about 30 years. Yeah.
Isn't that
But he got off the
something?
train when he moved here. He shook my hand. He said, "I've been drinking. Is that okay?"
I
I was
guess
so glad
so.
to see the man, you know,
Of
because he
course.
told me the message. You know.
By the way, I would have cleaned your bathroom, but it's spotless now, so.
I know. We have good kids. They just never let it show.
Uh,
I wanted to say to Jay, because we were sitting there at across from each other with the book. He's less than just 6 months, right? And he's saying this guy from my hot class, from his group, right? And I don't know what to say. No offense, but
No, I knew you didn't.
there's no fucking
you
group.
could-
It ain't gonna last. You'll be lucky if you last, because you know.
Yep.
I mean, none of you except for Martha. I don't know any of you since I come in, right? And
Right.
I can go down a list of people we used to. You remember Saturday Night Group? It was a magnificent group, right? I joined that group. There was Charlie and Dick and Carl and
Liz,
Liz and
Bill,
Brent and
Bill D.
Bill D. Still with us. He's right down the hill.
Yeah.
And Mark with the brain tumor.
Oh, yes.
Right? We sound like a bunch of fucking soldiers, don't we? Honestly.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
nobody
I
ever
would
shot a
agree.
gun at me,
Yeah.
but we've all lost friends in action,
Yeah.
if you know what I mean. We all knew it was coming,
Oh,
and we
like,
all knew
no,
better.
Liz
We all
is-
got fucking killed anyway. I mean,
Sorry, she's still around, but not just.
No, but I mean,
that's not-
not everybody dies, but you can be beyond use to anybody too.
Well,
you know?
I know someone who lived here and then moved away, and I kept in touch with her, and I still do a little bit.
Yeah.
But I hadn't seen her for a long time, and we had lunch together. And I said, "So how are the AA meetings where you've moved to?" And she said, "I don't go anymore." And she had many years of sobriety when she was here. I said, "You don't go anymore?" She said, "No, I don't need it anymore."
Is she
And
still
it's-
sober?
Well, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
There might be drugs.
Who can know? Right?
I'm not
You
sure
can't
about it.
tell.
I don't think she's drinking. But I said, what about that responsibility declaration that maybe you don't need it, but people who come there need you, you know?
That's
Like,
a blatant disregard for the 12
Yes,
steps. Says you
absolutely.
want
I-
what we have, you got to do what we did.
I
We
was
did the 12
shocked.
steps.
honestly, and I
Yeah.
don't mean, I admit I was judging her right then. But,
Well, we do that.
you know, I kind of lost connection with her again.
Well, that's so much a part of what we're about, right?
I struggle with
carrying
meetings.
the message
Yeah.
and whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, look at people who have like 45 years still
You're-
coming to
yeah.
one meeting a week usually. Boy, that's
Well, that's what I think we need
45
that, right?
years.
We need those one or two old timers in each of
Yeah.
the meetings so that the newbies don't think
right.
that it's therapy and I don't want to talk about how their dog
As
died.
long as that,
Right?
as long as that's how long-term sobriety functions. But if
Yes.
you,
Good point.
Now there
I
has
can
been-
tell you there are meetings in this town and probably in every other town that if I got there half an hour early and sat in that man's chair, he'd get drunk. Because
Oh, I
he's
know
been
what
coming to
you're
the
saying.
same
Yeah,
meeting,
yeah.
working steps 1 to 3 since he
Right.
got here. It's 35 years later. He's so dry he's a fire hazard. And
Right.
he's told his story the same way, the same time for 35 years.
Yeah.
Yes.
What have I
Science.
learned from him since the first time I heard him speak? Don't do that. That's what I fucking learned.
And that's right.
Sorry.
But he
Or-
might have a message
I'm not
for
co-
somebody else.
Or what I learned is
right?
I'd
That's
rather
my
be
answer.
drunk than
That's
like
right.
him.
Or I'd rather
I
be
think
drunk
that
than
sometimes.
Yeah.
There's some people that do get drunk and be like that guy. And I'm that guy in a lot of ways, right? I say the same thing, it's the same repetitive way, but I try to keep it moving because step 11, you got to improve your conscious contact. If you don't do that, deal's over. It's just all or nothing, right? Half measures or nothing. If I don't do step 11, it's my own fault, right? Don't have to go fast.
Fine, because it reminds me of what it used to be like for one thing, and then I hear something that I've never heard before. That's so helpful.
Okay, I'm gonna just play this.
What are you trying to play?
Chris Raymer.
Okay. I have never heard him.
Okay.
You've never heard Chris Raymer?
Never heard of him.
Really? He may offend.
No, I guarantee
take
no one
a
in
lot.
this room is going to be
It
upset.
would take a lot to
You may
offend
ask
me.
him.
Actually, no, you know what? The people in this room won't be offended
These
by
ones,
it.
those people, you know what he said? I'll tell you, first of all, I got copyright for Chris. I got him on my Facebook page. I said, do you
Okay.
mind if I use your stuff? I don't know if it's copyrighted, but I want your permission. He said, go for it. Nobody wants to hear it. I didn't say anything. I said, I'll send you a link.
Yeah.
So this is him, yeah.
Okay, bring it on.
My name's Chris Raymer. I'm a very grateful recovered alcoholic. I'm honored to be here. Gosh, it's great, like old home week. Some of y'all I know well, and some of y'all I haven't met yet, and I'm just honored to be here. It's just I was talking earlier. It's just this is going to be fun with Katie and Charlie this weekend, and I know some of y'all are not going to be able to be here tomorrow, and you're going to miss a hoot because it's. Sometimes you catch some resistance in audiences when you're coming out of the big book and you're a little thumper and, people don't agree with you, You got to try to share the podium with people like that. You with us? And it's like a cat fight the whole day. And it's like, well, this is what I really meant to say and I didn't intend to, and everybody walking on eggshells. And I just... It'll be fun. We're going to come at this tomorrow with an idea of how we take a newcomer through the steps at a pretty quick pace. We're going to walk through the steps at a pretty quick clip. I think one of the biggest mistakes we make in Alcoholics Anonymous, I'll tell you this, in all the 12-step fellowships, we just make this so freaking complicated that half the people out there just lose interest before they're halfway through. It's just not that complicated. I got to say this stuff going in the door and to kind of give you a little point of reference. I nearly died getting to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm also a member of some other fellowships, and I dearly love anybody that's trying to get well. And I think I just need to say this, guys. I've been sober, I don't know how long, 22 years now. I got sober in 1987, and I spent a lot of time speaking from podiums early on. I'm really shy, except when I get from behind this podium, and then God kind of kicks in, and I kind of go 100 miles an hour, and I have a reputation for cussing from the podium a lot, and I don't care what you think, kind of an attitude. And I just got to tell you, folks, I haven't cussed from the podium in years, and I care what you think. I get a little tired of being introduced as the asshole from hell, I had a circuit speaker friend of mine say one time, he says, Chris says from the podium what everybody in the room would like to say at certain times, but doesn't have the cojones to do it. And I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be the bad guy. I talked to Mark a lot before he passed away. Over the years, I became quite sensitive to the fact that I was, you know, when you walk in a room and you got some people, I mean, come on, guys, some of us we've swapped spit for years. You know, we're thick as thieves, and some of us, you know, it's like you walk in the room and people they don't like you for what you haven't even said yet. Y'all understand? They're sitting in the rooms waiting to be pissed off, and it's like you know, our fellowship is full of those people, and I can appreciate that. Y'all all like everything I've got to say. Chris, we appreciate your passion. We love you. You until I say something that you don't agree with. You with us? Katie and Charlie, they were just talking about the same thing, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, I can't believe he said that from the podium. That's just, you know, it's like, guys, man, buddies. One of the first things that Mark talked to me about was, let's look at your truth based on your experience. Not a head full of knowledge. Well, I don't know if this will work, or I don't know if that'll work, but it sounds good. What's your truth based on your experience? If going to 90 meetings in 90 days and spouting one-liners has got you sober and is keeping you sober and you're a happy little camper, how cool is that? Rock on. This is the bomb. You're welcome to do that. Y'all follow? It's not what the big book says. That's okay. But in the same breath, those meetings nearly killed me. That's my experience. Middle of the road solution. Watered down, weakened program, message. Nearly took me to a suicide attempt in 1987. And that's my experience. And that's just, I want to show you my truth based on my experience. I get thousands of emails from folks all over the world, thanks to a great, I work at a hospital, at a treatment center down in Texas, and I'm sitting in front of a computer terminal with an 800 number right there. You know, so I get to talk to people from all over the world, and the cats that pick up these stupid CDs over the last 20 years, and they all want to show. You'd be amazed how many people can relate to what we're talking about up here. But it takes the breath away when we come into a group of people and folks want to take shots about something they don't know nothing about. You know, it's like, it's my right to be 10 years dry in Alcoholics Anonymous, bone powder dry, miserable, you with me? Contemplating suicide or homicide on a daily basis. But that's perfectly okay. And it makes me sad to watch because Bill Wilson paints a completely different picture out of the book. And we're gonna talk about it some tomorrow. He talks about a program where we can be absolutely free and comfortable in our skin and excited about our lives. I mean, how sad it is that because some of us speak with passion from the podium, that we're the controversial ones. You follow? I mean, I said, Katie said this something. She said, I feel comfortable in these rooms. I got to tell you, I feel comfortable in this room because I know so many of you, you know. And I mean, people that usually ask us to speak are not people that, I mean, we get the big book thumpers. We nest them out, you know. And so we're all kind of in the same trench. But I mean, guys, I've sat in meetings where I felt lost. As we go around and share, and I'm listening, and I says, what? I was at a meeting in San Antonio not long ago, and I was talking to some of y'all about it, and I'd been on a bike ride down by the Alamo, and the Alamo's on Houston Street. Some of y'all come from the International next week, and we'll show you the Alamo. It's a pretty cool little place, but you can go left, like east of town, straight out Houston, and you'll see in some of the poorest parts of San Antonio is really sad. You with us? And I'm out riding bike down that road, and I'm the touring the neighborhoods, and it's just the poverty and the just the blatant public drug abuse and alcoholism. Y'all follow? And I said, God, I want to go to a meeting. I am so grateful that I'm in a fellowship, 22 years sober, and I've got a place to go, and we can talk about the steps in God. Anyway, I go to this meeting I'd never been to before, and there was a CA meeting, and I was going to go to the earlier meeting. I said, is there a meeting upstairs? And this guy stands at the door, and he says, yes. I said, okay. What time does it start? 7:30. He's just upstairs. I mean, he's irritated, you know? And I walk upstairs, and I walk into the room, and there's a little circle triangle sitting on the floor. It's a little tag sitting on the floor. And I walk in. I said, well, that's the meeting. And I walk in. There's 10 or 15 people in there. Actually, there's 11 because I counted them. There's not a big book in the place. I've got my big book because I brought it because I'm going to an AA meeting. Y'all follow? And we read how it works. And there's a living sober book there. Oh, my God. I guess I knew we were in the right room now. I want to puke. And they got a daily reflection, blah, 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 but we don't have a big book in the place, right? So we go around the room and we start to share. And it dawns on me, because nobody's talking about the steps or God or alcoholism, you'll follow. I'm thinking, if I was a newcomer in this meeting, What would I think? What message would I get? You'll follow? You know, flashback to 1980 when I went to my first Alcoholics Anonymous meeting and walked up the steps and they said, Chris, do you have a problem with alcohol? And I said, yes. And they said, welcome. And that's the last we talked about it. You know, lady was having a problem in the relationship, and we did. We talked about boundaries for an hour. And I went home and I said, honey, we need to go to therapy. We need to set some boundaries up in our relationship. And she said, I thought you were going there to stop drinking. And I said, yeah, I know, but we never got around to talking about that. Maybe tomorrow night. God almighty. Oh, my gosh. So in the short time I got with you, I mean, I'll give you the little gist of what we're going over, but I just want to share with you guys, man, my story, it's my experience. If it doesn't jive with your experience, buddy, that's just okay. I got to tell you, in the United States, some of y'all have heard me talk about this before, but you know, we went through some major transitions in the 70s and 80s in the treatment center field in the United States, and we scooped up a big old net out there for a long time, and we caught everything that we could catch. You with us? Insurance companies paying like slot machines back in the States and back there in the day, and we got y'all know, any of y'all ever seine fish? Y'all ever do? You don't ever know what you're going to pull in, you know? And the smart people, they'll keep the fish they want and they'll throw the rest of the way. Alcoholics Anonymous didn't do that. You know, we caught every little fruitcake and knucklehead in the world, every little disco drunk and party animal, we just scooped them up. Well, if you think you might have a problem with alcohol, you're welcome. How cool is that, you know? And they come into the meetings and they don't anymore have a problem with alcohol than a man in the moon. Y'all understand? But they're here, and they're staying, and they're the vocal majority in our fellowship today. You can get upset about it if you want, but at a certain point in our history of Alcoholics Anonymous, we stopped qualifying the alcoholic. I'm an alcoholic if I say I'm an alcoholic. No, you're not. I've seen these people's Facebook pages. They suck. I don't know what to tell you. You're a member of Alcoholics Anonymous if you say you are. Y'all follow what I'm saying? Anybody can be a member of our fellowship. And I'm not saying anybody can't. You're welcome. But the book spends the first 100 pages trying to explain to you the 12 steps. 60 of those pages qualifies the alcoholic. Walks like a duck, quacks like a duck. It's a duck. Y'all with us? And why we have such weird meetings sometimes is that we got a room that was set up for ducks, and everybody's in there thinking they're cats, you know, and so everything gets a little confused and a little goofy and this stuff. You can share anything you want, blah blah blah. But guys, we're dying of this fatal progressive illness. Alcoholics Anonymous is the only game in town. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they said, "Oh, I bet you're excited about everybody coming into San Antonio. You know, it's in my backyard. I mean, the international conference." I'm going to tell you, I'm dreading it. Y'all understand? I'm loving it because I get to hug all my little real alcoholic, my little gosh, my brothers and sisters in this fellowship. I get to know. But how this place is not going to be people by them. It's going to be people by the little one-liners from hell. You with us? Oh, I get to hug. Oh, one day at a time, Mike. Oh my God. Who hasn't sponsored anybody in 20 years. But he goes to a meeting every day. Y'all follow? Can't hardly wait. I don't know. What we're starting to see is the same thing that Charlie and them were saying, and Katie was saying. We're seeing these little pockets grow up all over the world, folks. Little groups of folks that have come out of the closet with big books and dusted them off and said, you know what, we're gonna start talking about the solution the way they did in the olden days, and we're gonna get us some little knuckleheads to come with us, and I got to tell you guys, some of you folks that I've met in here, Scott and here, I met early on in Toronto a gazillion years ago, buddies. I'm gonna tell you, we took so many shots for talking about the big book from the podium. I mean, people get pissed, you know. I mean, downright irritated with us. And the world has changed a bunch, and there's so much more of us out there. Why? Because, guys, guess what? The best kept secret, which is in the big book, the 12 steps, we're finding that actually works. We've got cats that are so pumped about this work. That's what we're going to be talking about tomorrow, and it's going to be uncomfortable for some of you because you're so, what's the word? Yeah, I wouldn't exactly use that word, but rigid comes to mind. I can give you I'll give you a classic example. When we talk about the newcomer, we want you to be open-minded and willing, and we talk about the newcomer, but what about the 22-year sober guy? How come but you don't have to be open-minded, just the new guy. I mean, it's just like, when does the journey stop? We were laughing, our little big book study coincides, and we were reading with a bunch of little mad dogs last night in Bill's story. And I've read Bill's story a million times. I come from a group where we study the literature over and over. And I'm sitting up there, and I got 40 guys in the room, and we've got our little books open, and we're reading Bill's story. And I'm not going to tell you which line it is, because you'll go, God dang, I thought he knew something. He's stupid. But I read this line, and it took my breath away, because I had never seen it before. I'd never noticed it from that direction before. And this is the book speaks to us the longer we're sober. I used to be one of these big, Microsoft at work. We use the Microsoft systems, and I had a computer at home. It's the same kind of deal. You with us? And I had a friend in Phoenix that kept saying, Chris, you ought to try one of these Macs sometime. And we just have a little. I was such a snot. Listen. Go Mac yourself. I'm not interested in that. I've got this works, it's great. I know how to do it. I've got kind of a narrow understanding anyway. I know how to turn the bastard on now and off, and that's it. So, but anyway, I was stuck in Scotland. We were speaking in Scotland, and the hotel rooms had a Macintosh computer in there. And it was like, I called down to the reception. I says, this room doesn't have a TV in it. Can I move to a They said, it's on the computer, and so he said, punch this. All of a sudden, I've got a TV, I got email, I got it, and I'm whizzing on this thing, right? I emailed Patty back in the States in Texas, and I said, buddy, listen, we really need to look into getting one of these, He was like, y'all understand what I'm saying? It's a perfect analogy. I'm so rigid. This is the way it's got to be. And then all of a sudden, you open your mind to the possibility that maybe, perhaps, something else could be better. Mark used to jam me up. He used to talk about my agnostic belief systems. Of course, I was a Christian. I was raised in the Baptist church, and oh my gosh, and I'm not an agnostic. And he said, Chris, you're the most agnostic person I know. You'll follow? Because I believe there's a God. I just don't think he wants to have anything to do with me. I'm always worried about money. I'm always worried about relationships. I'm always worried about you with this. God hates me. And he kept talking. He said, don't you think that God could take you to a different place? The miracle doesn't stop because we stop drinking. That's the beginning. Sobriety. That's the beginning of our journey. And unfortunately, in our fellowships, we've gotten to a place, in all of our fellowships, we've gotten to a place where that seems to be good enough. And it's not. We're going to touch on it this weekend. It is so not. Mark used to say over and over, I smell more. I smell. A lot of y'all heard him say it. I smell more, and it just takes a little effort to get to it, and that's what this is about. It doesn't take near as much effort as you think. I was a professional chef for 1 million years, and was pretty good at it. I wasn't such a good cook, but I was really quick. And when I found some of those outside issues, I got quicker. We could stay up all night long and clean and cook and chop, and everybody goes, oh my God, you're a super chef. What's that white stuff all over your nose? And I don't know. And we're drinking like son of a gun anyway. And I had some Europeans that took me under their wings and taught me some cool stuff. And I was pretty talented. And I come from a great family, folks. I got to tell you, Mom and Dad, they were wonderful. And my father was an alcoholic. And I've got a twin brother that caught the genetic bullet. Guys, we're going to talk about this tomorrow in First Step Stuff. Alcoholism and drug addiction, both, folks, is genetic in nature. The jury's in on this. This is biological, not psychological. And I know a lot of you guys are going to disagree. It doesn't mean that we can't use some psychological help too. But you've got to be wired this way to be one of us. and everybody looking at each other. Everybody got real uncomfortable because you've been sitting in meetings pissing and moaning about the bad thing that caused you to drink. And I'm not going to knock any of that, my friends. Please, I love you. That stuff exacerbated it and made it worse, but it didn't cause it. Good therapy can get you past that. Some great medications can help you with some of this other stuff. You with us? At a certain point in time, I've done all the medications, I've done all the therapy. You with us? And I'm still thirsty. Oh my gosh. And this is the hard piece to get people, because we didn't teach that in the 70s and 80s. We didn't teach that. We taught that this was causal. You with us? These little patients come into the hospital and they're just so confused. We get them in primary, we get them all detoxed, and we tell them, man, listen, alcoholism is a disease, guys. You're not bad, you're sick. And they start to get some hope, and you can hear them in there on the phones talking to their family. Oh my God, you're not going to believe this, buddy. There's some hope here. I've got this illness that's causing me to do this. And they get really excited. You with us? Then they go to their first day in primary, out of primary, and they're sitting there with their first case manager, right? And the case manager says, so, Chris, tell me why you drink. Because I got a disease. I'm an alcoholic. Wrong answer. Why do you drink? Really? Y'all understand? All the air just got pulled out of him. Shh. And now we're back to causal. Y'all understand this? We got to turn this around. Sooner or later, we got to get back into the literature and understand what this is about. If anybody in here, please, has just heard me say that your external stuff is not important, you've heard me wrong. It needs to be addressed. It needs to be looked at. It will stop you from following the dictates of the higher power. It will stop you from finishing this work. It needs to be addressed. But we've killed thousands and thousands of alcoholics and addicts over the years in treatment centers by making that the issue and not the spiritual malady. Make sense? We never got down to the causes and conditions, exactly what Katie was talking about. The root of my problem 22 years ago was selfish and self-centeredness. And let me be the first to tell you, today it is still the same. Selfish and self-centeredness. That's what ruins my day. I haven't had a drink in 22 years, but that's, y'all with us? That's the illness. That's the untreated. Why are we seeing such an influx? We're going to talk about it a bunch tomorrow, of people with long-term sobriety who are losing their sobriety. You with us? Proving positive that just going to meetings doesn't solve the problem. Not knocking going to meetings. Hell, I still go to a lot of meetings myself. But the meetings are not what's going to fix the problem. It's the work we do. 1987, I'd been drinking. I was what we would call a functioning alcoholic. I got a lot of this other outside issue stuff happening, taking place in my life, but I'm holding it together pretty well. And I am not robbing liquor stores or going to jail or getting in a lot of trouble. I had a little some run-ins, some scrapes, don't you know? But I bounced back pretty well, and I'm dodging that nonsense. But I am miserable inside. Y'all follow? And I've spent 7 years in Alcoholics Anonymous trying to address this. Every time I get my butt handed to me one more time, I walk back into Alcoholics Anonymous and pick up another chip, and then we sit down and we start talking about your day again, because that's going to help me stay sober. And then we'll go out to the picnic table and you'll tell me your story one more time about how many people you chopped up and put in plastic bags and buried out by the gym. And okay, and I'm not getting this. Do you know what I'm saying? I appreciate your sincerity and I appreciate the love that you shared with me in that meeting, but I can't stay sober listening to your stuff. People are trying to be so kind to me and so gentle with me that they won't tell me what to do. Y'all understand that most people are explained when they come to our fellowship that the steps are an option? That it's something that eventually, if you want to downstream, you can do. I got to tell you a quick story, because I just got back on bicycles again. I sold all my bike stuff years ago because I was going to move beyond that, and I missed it so much I went and bought it all back. So that's the nature of the beast. You should see what I got now. But anyway, I drive a 20-year-old pickup truck, but boy, this bicycle is something else, I got to tell you. But when I first started riding bikes early on, right after I got sober in the early 90s, I went to this bike shop with this guy, this big beefy guy. Some of you, my buds in here, like it. And we're riding with these guys, and they're all athletes. Okay, so And I'm not. I'm a little skinny guy, and I've always been that way. And then so we go into this bike shop, and the guy looks at me and says, we'll set you up on this bike, but I'll tell you what I'm going to do. And I'll never forget it. He looked both ways, and he said, well, we're going to give you some different gears than he has. And I'm thinking, bitch, oh, come on, what? Yeah. Oh, that sounds good. He said, Chris, it's no big deal, but what we're going to do is we're going to give you some lighter stuff to push so that you won't have to work as hard as he'll have to work. And you can keep up better. I'm thinking, God, I came to the right bike shop. This guy really helping me out, you know? There wasn't anything in me that believed that this guy wasn't doing me the biggest favor in the world. You follow what I'm saying? Paid extra for these little pussy gears he put on my bike. Y'all know where this is going. We went out and started riding with these hammerheads, and they're all out there hammering it like this, pulling standard gears, and I've got these little lightweight gears, and the guy that can't seem to catch up, that can't seem to improve, is me. And I'm so frustrated because I really want to get better. I can't get better because I won't work as hard as they're working, because the guy let me off the hook. And that's what we've done in Alcoholics Anonymous for years. We've tiptoed. This is what we do with a newcomer. I know. Let the tape show I just tiptoed. I don't know. We're going to do a pantomime lecture tomorrow. Oh my God. But that's what we do with the newcomer. We want to tiptoe around. We don't want to tell them. I mean, how many times have you gone into a meeting and somebody said, listen, don't worry about working those steps now. This is how the newcomer gets so confused. The guys would come up with me, and I'd never forget him as long as I live. Is up in Denton, Texas, and he had an old beat-up book and had duct tape around it. The covers coming off of it. And he starts to slide up next to me and talk to me about and a lady goes, come here, like this. And I go over and see, what? He says, don't go near that guy. He's one of those big book thumpers. Listen, all you need to do is just go to a lot of meetings, and everything's going to be okay. You just promise me you'll come to lots of meetings. Okay. And I said, oh, I will. 90 meetings in 90 days. I can do that. You with me? Was that lady trying to hurt me? No, she wasn't. She loved me dearly. She was trying to save me the headache of doing a nasty old 4-step that she never had to do in order to stay sober. How did this lady stay sober? She went to 90 meetings in 90 days. You with us? But she wasn't a real alcoholic. She didn't need to work the steps. She didn't have to have a spiritual experience in order to do this. Y'all understand? This is what the book trying to tell us on page 34. Bill Wilson says it crystal clear. If you can stay sober on a non-spiritual basis, you're not one of us. Most people can stay sober on a non-spiritual basis. Whip them good. Threaten them with an arrest. You with me? A divorce. Let their liver start to crawl out of their chest, and they'll say, you know what? I was just fixing to quit. And they'll put the old plug on the jug, and they'll walk away from that stuff, and they'll be done because they have the power to do that. You with us? Fear can keep those people sober. Wanting to stay sober is good enough for them. Needing to stay sober is good enough for them. In 1987, I got to tell you, folks, I've lost 3 businesses, and my health is horrendous. I'm hearing voices. Psychiatry has placed me on 7 medications a day. Antidepressants, anti-anxiety medications, some kind of suppository thing. I still don't know what that was. I'm on so many medications, I'm glowing. Y'all understand it? And I'm drinking on top of that. And when I can come up with the money, I'm doing little some of them outside issue stuff. Y'all follow what I'm saying? And I am miserable. I hate my life. What Charlie said a minute ago was so true. You know, you drink or drug in the beginning, and it's just like, oh shit, where's this been all my life? You know, this is good. You know, at 17 years old, I drank my first bottle of Boone's Farm apple wine. It was about this big right here, and I'm walking back across that field, and my head says, you know what? It's gonna be okay. You know, for the first time in my life, I'm gonna be okay. And that's just the effect produced by alcohol is not drunkenness. That's not what the book is talking about. The effect is a sense of ease and comfort. I get well when I drink. And everybody wants to focus on the fact that this is the problem. If you just quit drinking, everything will be okay. It was okay for that lady that told me not to work the steps. But for the real alcoholic, you lay the booze down, your life is going to go to hell in a handbasket. Because we're not dealing with a problem with alcohol. We're dealing with alcoholism. I'm 7 years in Alcoholics Anonymous and nobody will explain that to me. Why is it that more of us commit suicide in sobriety than we do out there drinking and drugging? Because we don't get better when we just don't drink one stupid day at a time. We get better when we have a spiritual experience and the obsession to use is lifted from us. We have treatment centers out there killing people today, telling them all they got to do is avoid temptation, triggers, and everything will be okay. And every time we talk about this all over the world, everybody laughs the same way, and then they go right back in meetings and talk about it some more. You with us? Every time you relapse, we're going to find out what happened, what triggered you. You know what happened? You didn't work the steps and have a spiritual experience. That's what happened. That's the bottom line. There's only two reasons that you will absolutely relapse. You don't know what the problem is, and you don't know what the solution is. Some of you will disagree, but if you'll think about that tonight, laying in bed, think about it. God damn, the little one-eyed guy's right. If you don't know the solution, and you don't know what the problem is, you'll follow? Okay. It's like taking my car. It's broke. The mechanic says, what's wrong with it? It's broke. You got to get... What? What's wrong with it? That's what we do in AA. You with us? Little guy comes in, I'm broke. But we don't tell the guy what's wrong with him. That the spiritual malady is going to kick his butt. That alcoholism, a progressive illness, is fixing to reach up and grab him in the butt, and this is going to get worse. Y'all understand where we're at? We need to slow down. This is the first thing we're going to talk about in the morning, and explain to the newcomer what's wrong with them so that they can have this urgency to finish the work. If you think you've got time to do the work, folks, then you don't understand what the problem is. Because it's grinding us up, buddies. This is why we're losing so many old-time members in the fellowship. In 1987, I'm sitting in a small little apartment that my sister-in-law co-signed for me up in Louisville, Texas. And it's a little efficiency apartment about the size of this podium. Not much of an exaggeration, guys. And it's a cold Thursday night, and I bought a 12-pack of beer and went home and picked up a stack of return checks and opened them up. And there's the rent check in there, and here I am again. I'm 35 years old, and I've bankrupted another checking account. Y'all know what it is? I own a business on paper. I've got a little screen print business, and I'm working for my twin brother. And I'm an accredited chef. I could go make a bunch of money, but I've got a couple of $100 in the bank. I'm living from paycheck to paycheck. You with us? I'm going to be on the street if something doesn't happen quick. And I'm just done. I've done treatment. I've done therapy. I've done the church. I've done 7 years of meeting Make or Make It. I've got more desire chips than you can shake a stick at. Last time I picked up a desire chip, nobody applauded. I am just wearing them out. You know what I'm saying? Because they know that I'm not going to stay sober. You just don't want it bad enough. You just don't want it bad enough. Not one of those guys ever told me to sit down and do the work. Not one of them. That's my story. I took a bottle of pills that night. 2 bottles of Valium is what I took, and if I remember correctly, and I washed it down with some Black Label, and about the time those pills hit my stomach, I heard a voice that said, don't do this, go back to AA. And I don't come from a family that takes this kind of stuff lightly. Y'all understand that? I got a beautiful family, but there's no note, there's no drama here. I am sick and tired of being a loser, because that's not who my daddy raised. And oh my gosh, family members, they think we don't know what we're doing. I got to tell you, folks, there's times that's true, but mostly, anytime that stuff hit my stomach, and I heard this voice that said, "Don't do this, go back to AA." And I heard it voiced twice. Rapid succession. Chris, don't do this. Go back to AA. Not a thought. Chris, perhaps you should go back to AA. That was not the. Chris, don't do this. Go back to AA is the voice I heard, and it freaked me out. And I've talked to a lot of other people that have heard similar things, but the hair stood straight up on the back of my neck, and I made myself sick. I laid down on the side of the bed and heard the voice, again, and I dozed off, conked out, passed out, and luckily I woke up the next day. And I heard the voice one last time that morning as I got out of bed, don't do this, go back to AA. And I was so sick. I was so banged up. And I went to the doctor, and I went to work. And at 6 o'clock that night, I went to a meeting I'd never been to before. I knew where it was because a guy had showed me. Some of you guys that think these 12-step things don't pay off, this guy had showed me where this meeting was 3 years earlier. He'd showed me. I was coming out of a blackout, and I called him on the phone, and he took me to a meeting in Louisville, Texas. And he said, Chris, he said, this is a nest right here of big book thumper fools in there. He said, don't go in there if you just want to go to meetings and get a date, because that's not what they're about. They study the book in there. And I remember I'm smiling thinking, that's good to know, you know. And I remember making a mental note, I'll die before I'll go into that meeting. I mean, I'm just not, thanks for the warning, you know. I mean, I'm not going to do that. You'd never get laid in a group like that. I mean, why else would you go? And oh my gosh, but I was running late. You know how God was all over this. The little brother just said it, inches and seconds in some of these things. And I was running late, and I couldn't go back up to this other town to go to this meeting where I used to go. And so I'm going to stop off, get a cup of coffee, let some people know that I'm back in the program again, and then I'm going to go on home. You with us? And I walked in the back door of this meeting, and they were just like we're doing. They're laughing their butts off. Some of y'all have heard CDs. I've talked about it. They're all, this back in the day we could smoke in meetings, and they've all got 6 or 7 cigarettes out of their mouths, you know. You poor little guy. We ruined it for you new guys. That's all I can say. We just smoked one. Well, we didn't. Everybody's smoking too much. Ceiling's dropping down, and I'm walking in the room, and I wish I could describe what I looked like. I always look a little rough anyway, but that's a big full beard I had, and I always had food in it, and and that big long hair. And that was the big joke when I got sober. Was that we didn't know if you were wearing an eye patch or an ear muff, because just hard to look cool like that. I got to tell you, and I'm 2 days without a shower, and I have 2 things in my closet. I got a couple of Levi's and 3 Fruit of the Loom T-shirts. You with us? They come in packets of 3. In case y'all don't know that, you can get a blue one and a red one and a green one. And you get them. You wash them every time, and the little pocket slides back over towards the middle. You know what I'm saying? You don't know if you're wearing a T-shirt or like pretending you're a kangaroo or something. When you got the little pocket. And here I am with these little T-shirts all sweat stained. I haven't bathed. You with us? I mean, I'm banged up. And I'm walking in, and they're laughing. And you know how we get... The word is hyper-vigilant. Y'all know what I'm talking about? You get very self-conscious about who you are and what you are. And they're laughing, and I'm checking my zipper and a patch. And what are they laughing at? I know they're laughing. They're not laughing at me. They're laughing at something else that's going on in the meeting. There's 30 people in that room. You with us? And I said, I can't do this. I'm detoxing in this meeting. I'm right at 24 hours away from my suicide attempt. And I took one step back, and this little girl snuck up. She swears she didn't sneak up on me. I didn't see her. She came up on my blind side, and I stepped back on her foot. She got her finger in my belt loop. And I've shared it from every podium I've ever talked from, guys. This was a little 19-year-old girl in Alcoholics Anonymous doing what she was supposed to be doing. You with us? You can't work with men. If she'd have been off in a little young adult meeting talking about young adult things, I'd have been dead. If it had been an old boy, you with me? I'd have just shoved you out of the way. She'd sit down, cowboy, you ain't going nowhere. And she set me down in a chair, and I sat. Boom. She's still sober today. And I am today because she cared. Her sponsor couldn't get to me. It was a long, narrow room, and her sponsor saw me leave, turn around to walk out, and she said, get him. And she got me. You'll see how that works? How God's going to use. We think we're so smart, I don't know who I can help. You got that right. Your job is to show up and just be there. Oh my gosh. Anyway, they sat down, and the chairperson saw me and gave me the high sign. He'd seen me in North Texas for years and gave me a big old up, welcome back. And they said, chairperson took charge of the meeting. It's the same old stuff. It's like freaked me out. First time I'd ever seen a chairperson do that. You know what I'm saying? You got a guy in there practically dead in the back of the room. Oh, we got a newcomer, but I think tonight we're going to talk about relationships. I don't know what it is about it. We either want to talk about relationships or let's tell Chris how we got here. It's like, buddy, I know. Let me guess. Oh, shit. Let me guess. You drank too much. What are we doing? Oh, my gosh. Like you're going to scare me into the rooms again, Oh, my gosh. They didn't do that. They said, Chris, is back in again. We're going to go around the room. You guys that have worked the 12 steps, let's share with this guy how our lives have changed as a result of working the steps. You with us? Wow, yeah. That translates to those of you in the room that haven't worked the steps. Be quiet. Proper term is pat. But again, it's like Mark used to say, I wish people, when they share their opinions, would say in a meeting, I'm sharing my opinion. Because the little newcomer coming in the door doesn't know that you don't know. You with us? How many times have you guys been in a 4-step meeting and the little guy comes around, he's just got out of treatment, says, well, I haven't done a 4-step, but this is what no. Shut up. Be quiet. Be quiet. Talk about what you know. Talk about what you have experience with. Because that's what the newcomer is going to gravitate to. They went around the room that night and they talked about getting their money back. And they talked about getting credit cards and getting married and buying houses and doing all the cool stuff. I'm less than 24 hours away from a suicide attempt, right? And this guy's giving me the one thing. This room is sharing the one thing that I need more than anything. And that's hope. Hope. Can you wake up in the morning and not obsess about alcohol? What a concept. And yet we want to paint this picture that every day is a day you might drink. Whoever got up earliest today is sober the longest. I beg to, by God, differ. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Again, we're candy coated. What kind of hope is that to give to the newcomer? Why in the hell stay sober a week? You're going to lose it anyway. Oh my gosh. Good heavens, there's no hierarchy here. It doesn't mean we're better, but good God, that's why we need the old timers back in the rooms, sharing their sobriety dates, picking up chips to show us that this thing works. I know I can stay sober a week. I've done it 1,000 times. It's that month that I'm having a little problem with. It took me 7 years to pick up a 30-day chip. You'll follow? The next day, that night, the guy got around me and they asked me if I was ready to stay sober for good and for all, not one day at a time. For good and for all. He said, we're going to show you how to live life one day at a time. Are you ready to do this? And I said, yes. And the next day, they were on my doorstep. I hated that shit. You know with this? Because I've forgotten a lot of that stuff. I mean, I know what I said last night, baby, but this morning... And I'm running around cutoffs looking for my patch, and who in the hell's out there? And it's the guys from AA, and you know the look, he's got a little book. I'm going quick. He's got a little big book, and he's, oh no. And he says, I'm supposed to bring you back up. And he did. He took me back up to the meeting. We went to a 10 o'clock meeting, and we went in the back room. We chased a bunch of Al-Anons out of their back room, out of their meeting room after the meeting. And we got back down there, and guy asked me if I had a problem with God, and I said, no, not a bit. And he explained the 3rd-step prayer, and we did a 3rd-step prayer. And we went to lunch and came back. He gave me a notebook, says, hey, let's start working on that 4th step. And I said, Mom, man, I'm not ready for that. He said, buddy, you've had 7 years to get ready. Start making a list of the people you're pissed at. And I said, your name's on it. You know that. And he did exactly what we're doing right now. He laughed. He said, yeah, I know. I expect it will be for a while, too. And he said, but I love you, buddy, and I want you to get well. And you're not going to get well if you just sit on your butt. You've got to get into some action. And 2 weeks later, I'm sitting on the tailgate of my truck, and it dawns on me that the obsession to drink is lifted. 2 weeks in, and I've recovered from alcoholism and drug addiction. And the obsession to drink and drug has never returned. Yeah. Guys, the same miracle that took place in Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob's life, these guys working the steps quickly and they come out the other side and the obsession went away. And I know there's some of you in here that are still fighting this on a regular basis and the desire continues to come back. And I'm telling you, that's not... Let's do the work because there's a reason for that. And that's just what we try to teach people in treatment centers and the guys that I sponsor. So it's cause and condition. The big book says a price has got to get paid. It means that we got to start destructing this self-centeredness, and that's how we work the steps. My ego is so huge, guys. We're going to talk about it tomorrow. And that's what the steps do is they keep my ego right size. I don't want to be better than y'all. Y'all understand that? Don't ever hear me that I'm 22 years sober and I'm better. No, come on. But I don't want to be worse than you either. And that's where I spent all of my life. I could walk in used to go drink at an ice house down there in Houston. You know what an ice house is? Old beer joint on the street, and they pull up the garage door, and everybody sits out in front and drinks. And and I'm out there, and I always would put a tie on before I would go into this ice house, so I would look better than these guys. I'm hoping none of them knew it was a clip-on tie. You know what I'm saying? But that's the way it was with me because of my ego. I'm either better than you or worse than you. And it's all the same it's all the same thing that's going to block me from you, and eventually it's going to block me from God. And by working the steps, I got spiritually connected. Guys, it hasn't been easy. My life has not been easy. It's been a wonderful journey, but there's been some huge sadnesses in there and some trauma, and good God. But I get to walk through it with your help, with grace and dignity. I wanted to commit suicide in sobriety one time around a divorce. It was a tragic deal. There was a little stepson involved, and it was just, it broke my heart. But not once did I want to drink or drug, because the 10-step promises had come true, and it placed me in a position of neutrality. And somehow, guys, we've got to get a whole bunch of people trying to represent this program the way it's supposed to be represented. This is about power. This is about permanent, by God, sobriety. This is about sobriety, being able to walk through stuff with grace and dignity and come out the other side and not walking on eggshells worried about the day you're going to wake up and think about drinking. Y'all understand where I'm at? And it's not the picture that is usually presented by Hollywood about Alcoholics Anonymous. We're a punchline of a stupid jokes, folks, because the message has been so dadgum watered down it's not even funny. And we as a fellowship need to grab this thing back, 75 years old. We've damn near lost it. And what we're going to talk about tomorrow is how we can work these steps. And if you'll come back tomorrow with an open mind about this and ask questions and bring a little notebook, and if we say something that doesn't ring true to you or confuses you, let's talk about it. Let's visit about it. We can do it question and answer from the podium. We can also do it at the breaks if you don't want to, you're with us, if you're too shy to ask. It's not complicated information we're covering, but it goes against what a lot of us have been taught. And that's what makes us uncomfortable. You with us? I'm going to say this and shut. I cannot tell you how many times we've had these workshops and we've talked to people, and people get uncomfortable and they come back down and says, "Well, my sponsor said," or "My case manager said," and I'm not knocking any of that, case managers or sponsors or whatever. But Mark used to say, if you can't reconcile it with what's in the big book, you might want to hold it suspect. Or how's this working for you? Because you're going to hear some things new. You're going to hear some things that may go against what you've been doing in the past. But if with a little open-mindedness, it might work a little bit better. It might change your life. And that's what we certainly hope to do.
Thanks for hanging around for episode 2. Hope to be back for 3 really soon. Work hard, don't quit. Thanks to my network sponsor, Astro Theology Radio, and Ruth the Remo Smith. Thank you for all your help and encouragement and technical support. None of this would have happened without you or Lisa and Andrea from Rising Frequencies. Thank you, ladies. And all my friends, you know who you are. Love you. Much love. Bye.